Hey guys, today I'm gonna go over some commander cards that I kind of noticed that don't get enough play. Not really budget-friendly cards. I think they're not like insanely overpriced. I think the highest one's around $10 or $11. Uh, but it's things that I've noticed that when I do see them played, they usually do have a bit of an impact that maybe either players don't recognize or um, that people just don't really seem to be playing as much as they should be. I mean, I go to three LGSs to play Commander, and I actually have a personal play group. Some of these cards I've noticed from other people playing, and some of them I play myself, and I realize, hey, like this card is better than what people are leading it on to be, or maybe they're cards that are just maybe I'm misjudging them. You know, I don't go to enough LGSs, and I do. Some of these I haven't necessarily played with. I've played against them, and they might be too situational compared to what I think. But they're at least considerations if you're at least trying to put some pretty good cards in your deck that maybe fit a role that necessarily you don't already have, or if you want something that's just a bit fun and exciting to do that maybe you don't have to build around, but it can do something interesting at least and make everyone go ooh and ah at the card shops. So the first one I have is Ghostly Pilferer. For the most part, the first part doesn't really matter on this about becoming untapped. You pay two or whatever. Um, the middle part, the middle ability, is really the important part. Everything else doesn't actually really matter. So making it unblockable and paying two when it untaps to draw doesn't matter. The main thing we're actually looking at here is whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. And a lot of times I've noticed, well, obviously the big one is anywhere other than their hand includes the command zone. So you will definitely be drawing a card whenever they cast their commander. Uh, but this also does things from exile or from the library. So if you're cascading, if you're casting things from the graveyard with flashback, um, casting things from other people's libraries or graveyards and things like that. This can work pretty well for drawing you some cards. I mean, you don't get it if you cast it, but if your opponent's casting something from your graveyard, you get a card. At the very least, this is like, a 2 mana draw two, and then you actually even get a way to discard cards for free with it as well. So a lot of times, maybe you could figure out some way to get some free madness from it. But the main part is mostly the card draw from opponents casting spells from anywhere other than their hand. You getting to draw a card is just a really good advantage over time. And if someone board wipes it, they're going to board wipe it no matter what card advantage engine you're going to get. That's a creature is going to get board wiped. But it's really quick into the game that you can at least like um, what would be the word? Use its ability. You could benefit from it. And so, I mean, it's a good card. It's not anything insane, but it is cards that it's a card that I feel like should be played more. And it's a spirit and a rogue, which is both very relevant and also can be played in ninjas. I don't know if ninjas play it, but if they don't, they should. Um, Another rogue. I didn't think about how that was going to come right after the other rogue, but is Thieving Skydiver. This card I play in my Merfolk deck, and every single time I get to play this, it's amazing because um, it's 2 mana. You have to pay kicker X, so whatever converted mana cost of an artifact you want to steal. It takes an equipment, or well, I guess an artifact, and if it's an equipment, it equips to it automatically. But the main thing about it is this can steal soul rings. This can steal mana crypts. Sure, you can't. You have to pay one more. Like you have to pay this and the cost of the soul ring, but you take a soul ring away from someone and you gain a soul ring. So and you get a 2/1 flyer, which isn't a terrible body for like 2 mana, and then you pay the one for the soul ring, and then if you don't even wanna like this is really great for ninjutsu because you can steal people's soul rings, mana crypts, bounce it back to your hand, recast it, steal some other mana crypt soul ring, and you have two more mana now because you have the mana crypt or soul ring, and this just becomes better and better each time you cast it. This is sort of enter the battlefield effect kind of thing, but it's really I mean, you do want to cast it. That's the main thing to get the kicker cost. So sadly, you can't blink it or anything and take it because it has to be on cast and then kicked. Being kicked is what kicks off the ability, I guess you could say. Um, this card I'm really, really, really surprised to see more play, especially with all the green-blue decks running around, and especially with all the artifacts and enchantments going around. A 3 mana, 2/3 flyer that deals combat damage to a player and destroys an artifact or enchantment is insane. Like, the one downside would be if you're in a meta where there's board wipes all the time and the only creatures you can play are, enter the battlefield effects. But at that point, like a lot of creatures become bad, and it's really more about your meta than anything else. And usually in most games, you're gonna at least get like one attack in at the very least. But uh, with one attack, it becomes a better reclamation stage, right? It's a slower one, but if you can start keeping this around for a few turns, this can be really great. It can also get rid of like if you can pay the tax, you can get rid of ghostly prisons, and that's a huge deal. It's evasive, so it's usually going to get around stuff, and it has flying synergies. Kind of weird it's a beast and not like, I don't know, anything else, but I mean, other than that, it's still a really good card, and I think it should see way more play than it really does. We have Perplexing Chimera. So, this one has some upsides and some downsides, but whenever an opponent casts a spell, you exchange control of this and that spell, and if you do, you choose new targets. It is 5 mana for this effect, but the main thing is you get to disrupt your opponents, and they have to answer this, and that's one thing less than they have to answer of yours. Like you would need to like they'd have to have a board wipe because doing targeted removal, you can gain control of it, and then eventually, this steals something of someone else's opponent or another opponent. And this is really good if you're playing effects that you are okay with anyone having on their side of the field, or vice versa. Um, like if you have even exchange kind of things, if you're trying to maybe even protect what you have on board for a turn, um, just cause some chaos. It's more of a fun card than really good, but I don't see why it's not played as much as it should be. Maybe we're just getting to the point where 5 drops are too high of a cost in Commander, which is kind of ironic since the whole point of the format was to be able to play your 8 and 9 drops, but now 5 drops are becoming, well, that's the last spell of the game. Uh, Ulvinwald Hydra. So, the main thing about this is the enter the battlefield effect that lets you search for a land and put it on the battlefield immediately. It's usually around like maybe like a 3 or 4 mana kind of effect, but you do get a reach creature that's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. Um, if you can bounce this or do anything like that, or if you're doing like a green black deck and you want to do Cabal Coffers and Urborg, this is a really good card to finish off, like assembling that. Can also get you Field of the Dead, so you can start that shenanigans. And it's 6 mana, so Field of the Dead comes in right after this. If you are playing your untapped lands, or even if you want to play this, get Field of the Dead, then play another land, you got 2 zombies for 6 mana. It's basically um, oh, whatever it is. It's like a better Grave Titan, except the body's really not what you're kind of going after. You really want to get the land. So now I'm going to go from creatures. I think this is going to be spells. I kind of forgot which order I did it in. But yep, it's spells. Okay. So By Force is a really good removal spell in Commander, especially because everyone's playing Vintage or Legacy or whatever you want to call it. Well, I guess Legacy, but everyone's playing all these artifact ramp. There are the land decks that are going to play a lot of lands. You can't really get around that, but This can punish the players who are just like playing four color stuff and just like popping down like soul rings and the mana crypts and mind stones and just going on and on and on with all these artifacts. There's a there's some commanders that can use this to just pay one red, destroy all your opponent's artifacts basically. But I mean, this is a pretty good spell. I mean, it's a little it's not even you could say situational, but the situation is pretty much the entire format as a whole. Like everyone's playing an artifact in their deck. This has a target. This will always have a target, and it only gets better the longer the game goes on. Because as people are board wiping, all these artifacts are staying around, and you can punish people for putting all their mana into artifacts and trying to ramp into something big that's gonna just destroy everyone. You can at least slow them down a turn, which can be a huge deal in Commander. Um, Rakdos Charm. I wish I had the version that had like the names, like or everything listed. Um, the way it is here is kind of annoying, but I'll explain it pretty easily. So for 2 mana, red and black, you can exile all cards from target player's graveyard, which can be really good if someone's going to reanimate something or about to like go infinite with like a sack and reanimate effect. Destroy target artifact, so it's a pretty relevant thing, just like I said with force. Or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller, which is kind of a funny thing that I have done before, where someone went infinite with goblins and was about to kill everyone, and I used Rakdos Charm and hit them for infinite damage. So right before they were about to kill everyone, they kind of had each creature dealt damage to them, which was pretty funny. But it is an interesting spell that can sometimes just get people by not like even realizing like, oh, I can survive on like 5 and they have like 10 creatures on board. You just hit them for 10. Like it's a huge swing in life that people just don't anticipate because not that many people are playing this, and I don't think almost anyone has ever used the each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Usually most people destroy an artifact or exile a graveyard. That's kind of how I feel about it, at least. This card I really did not even know existed. I kind of was just like doing some research for the video and I found this out. And it is a card that has a very strict stipulation to when you cast it. So you have to cast it on combat on an opponent's turn. So, but the effect is really good. For one thing, um, you get to return X target creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield, um, and sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. So the main thing about this is you get to return every single creature you control. You get to, or not every single one, but you can return as many as you can pay. You know, if you have a good enter the battlefield effect kind of deck, like a Mole Drifter, right? For 3 mana, you flash in a Mole Drifter, let it block something, uh, and you can do this at instant speed. So you get to like evoke a Mole Drifter basically. Like that's the worst case scenario in some decks. Is just I just get back a Baleful Strix, block, kill something, and then I draw a card for 3 mana. Like that's really good. If you're playing any decks with enter the battlefield effects in black, which is a lot of them, you're gonna want to play this card, especially if you have good blockers with Death Touch or things like that. Um, or even things with die triggers. I don't know why I didn't say that, but yes, if you have die triggers, this is insane because you just bring everything back. I'm probably going to put this in my Tesa deck now that I know it exists. I don't think it's that much. I can't imagine it's that much because I've almost never seen it played and it deserves to be played. Because even if you're not blocking someone's stuff, all it says you have to do is cast it during an opponent's combat. They go from main phase 1 to 2, you cast it. You go to their end step, everything gets sacked, right? You can bring back some crazy creatures with dying triggers or enter the battlefield triggers. So it's a very good card that I feel like is not forgotten. It just no one seems to be playing this, and they really should. This is a card that really should see play. And I'm gonna be playing it now that I know about it. Ink Shield. So this card does see play, but not enough, I think. It is 5 mana for prevent all combat damage to you, but the upside is you survive like an infinite combat attack or even attack for like lethal or even an attack that's just a lot of damage, you know? Like think about this. Like let's say you would have taken 10 damage, which isn't that much usually in Commander. I mean, yeah, it's a fourth of your life, but there are people who just swing for 10 sometimes because you have no blockers. You play this, now you have 20 power in the air, and if you have any way to benefit from that, even better. Like if you can double tokens, if you can make your creatures bigger, which white usually does. This can be a pretty good card, and I definitely would suggest people play it a lot more. When it was played, it pretty much won the game. Like two or three times I've seen it played. It has either won the game or completely changed the game to the point where it was just like it, obviously this depends on the meta, and this is not a meta card. This is not for CDH because CDH almost rarely ever does combat damage because that is the main downside of it. But like other than the fact that like yeah sure if you have a bunch of combo players don't play this card unless they're making a bunch of like Land of War Elves and then you can just do this kill everyone else with their own combo but like that's not the same you know not Land of War Elves but Craterhoof Behemoth like oh I'm gonna Craterhoof Behemoth you for 50 well now I've got 100 power in the air. I mean that's just how ridiculous this card is and it should see more play. It's a really good political thing too as well. If you have like 5 mana open, people might just not attack you as much, which could just slow them down from killing you. But also maybe like I don't know. It's just good. I mean, it's just good. You should play it more often, guys. Come on. Azures Predation. He looks kind of creepy in this, but for each creature your opponents control, you put a 4/4 green beast onto the battlefield, and those beasts fight a different creature for each of those creatures. It's weird, but so basically, for like let's say you're going up against a goblins player, someone made a bunch of goblins. You make a bunch of 4/4 beasts and kill all the goblins. I mean, when you really think about it, the 4/4 beasts, I mean, you're basically paying 8 mana to board wipe everything with 4 toughness or less that doesn't have indestructible or something, or protection from green, I guess. That's usually not a thing most things have protection from. Um, I guess like other than I think what I don't know. Oop, sorry, that's the chair. I gotta adjust it. Uh, but I don't know. I mean, this card is fun. It's 8 mana, so obviously it's a lot of mana to put into a spell. It's sorcery speed. But if you think about it, you board wipe, and then the worst case scenario is, well, obviously someone counter spells it, but you could say that for any spell. But worst case scenario is if this does resolve and someone board wipes, you basically force them to use the board wipe, um, and you wipe the board anyways. Like someone could be in a good position, have a board wipe, not going to be able to be using it, and then just like force them to use it. I guess that's really the worst case scenario, but it's like your board wipe's worst case scenario is if your opponent has a board wipe, and if you were gonna board wipe with something else anyways, and maybe if you're only in green, this is really good for you because you have a lot of ramp, you have a lot of mana, but you don't have a lot of board wipes because you're not doing a lot of board wiping. You're trying to build a board. This is a good way to do it and also get rid of a board. Okay, we're on the artifacts. So Everflowing Chalice has 0 cost. So if that's ever a thing for you, like you Urza players or anything gross like that, uh, that's good for you. But the main thing is multi-kicker 2. So you pay 2 for each time you want to kick it, and it enters with a counter for each time it was kicked, and for each counter it taps for a colorless. So the main thing is like it's sort of like a Mind Stone or Hedron Archive, but the nice thing about it is it's both. It does kind of lose the ability to sack it and draw a card, but a lot of people really don't care about that ability. If you think about this, like your 4-drop commander, it makes it more consistent to play, and if you're already going to get it out and you have a bunch of mana, you can pump this into it, maybe play an X spell, maybe you do something else with the mana, but it's a good way to get like uh, a lot of mana. It's very versatile, which is the main thing. Because it does come in untapped. So you pay 4 for it maybe, and then you pay like another 1 and the 2 to play like a 3 mana spell. You're doing pretty good, I'd say. I mean, that's turn 5, but you also ramped 2 and basically played another spell. Like, this is a pretty good card in like non-green decks, and should see more play. I mean, it sees play, but just we got to bump it up, guys. Come on. This one is Meek Stone. Yeah, sadly, creatures with power 3 or greater do not untap during their controller's untap step. The main thing about this is if you're playing a deck with Vigilance, you're good. If you're playing Walls, you're good. If you're playing small tokens that like maybe they get up to 2 power with an Anthem or something like that, like if you're playing this, you should be built around it, or at least able to benefit from it for somehow. Like if you're playing Planeswalkers or something else, you know what I mean? Uh, the main thing about this is that a lot of creatures are big nowadays. They're really big. And they're tapping and they're coming after you. And you are probably going to get hurt a little bit from playing this, and people are going to call you stacks or whatever, but as long as you're not playing literal stacks, I think this card's fine, and it has a reason to exist. It's punishing people for playing big creatures, as they should be. I mean, just like how there was land destruction to punish people for playing like multicolored like lands that have these crazy mana bases that they can't keep up with. They're like, non-creature land destruction or non-basic land destruction should be a thing because uh, people are playing too many five-color decks. Stacks maybe should be a thing because everyone's playing too like 5 spells a turn. And I don't mean stacks like everything costs one more, but I'm talking about like each player can only play 1 or 2 spells a turn. We need to slow down the game. The game is going too fast with no way of stopping, man. We're just plowing right through it. Um, Mask of Memory. So, 2 mana, and you can pay 1 to equip it, and whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw 2 and discard 1. So usually in Commander, you're going to end up with a lot of mana left open. If you're, like after a board wipe or like maybe you have some easy attack or an invasive creature, you can attack with this usually, and especially if you're playing like, because usually what this sees play in is mostly the commander being the attacker, but the draw 2, discard 1 is a huge deal. It fills up your graveyard for one thing. Uh, it makes you see 2 new cards. Um, it does good enough stuff that I think that like even getting like 2 or 3 hits in this and then not doing anything is still fine. It's still good. And then anytime it becomes relevant again, it does. It helps you clean your hand and make it better. Filter through it. And I think it's a good card. I'm running out of breath. Chaos Wand. So I think this one should be played more. It is very chaotic. Hence the name. But you pay 3 to play it, pay 4 to reveal the top cards from an opponent's library, and then you get to cast the instant or sorcery that comes first without paying its mana cost. And then, well, yeah, whatever. The rest doesn't really matter. But the main thing is you're trying to get a random instant and sorcery from your opponent. For one thing, this is really good for ruining people who are trying to do miracle cards. Miracle cards really don't like this, I'd imagine. I imagine they wouldn't like you either after this, but people scrying to the top of their library. What was that spell? Was it really good? Were you trying to bait me out? You have to make them play that little game of, is he going to use it on me or not? Um, or she, I guess. I'm talking about from my perspective. I think it's fun. It's always fun. Like, my favorite thing to do is do it like while someone has a spell on the stack, because if you get a counter spell or like anything like that, you always have a target for the most part. As long as you wait for a spell to be on the stack to use this, usually you'll have something you can do. Unless you just like don't have an instant sorcery in your graveyard and it returns one or something crazy like that. But sometimes you just have extra mana. Just boom, do something interesting with it. It's a fun card. It's not really anything that I would say it's not going to break the game, and it should be played more. Um, this card, I think, definitely should be played more for like a lot of reasons. I mean, this is probably the pricier card. I think it's around $10. But I don't see it played as much. 3 mana, and then you can pay 2 and 1 blue. So you do need to be in a blue deck. I guess that would be its one major flaw is the blue deck, or the blue cause on it. Because if you were in a green-white deck, this deck would, or this card would be insane. But you put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library. So you can do this to your creature or your opponent's creature. But for the sake of the video, I'm talking about doing it on ours. Doing it on theirs turns it into a bad Chaos Warp. Doing it on ours turns it into a good, well, it just turns it into a polymorph, I guess you could kind of say. Maybe a little bit better or worse, I'm not sure. Uh, Probably worse. But if you do this on, like, let's say you're a blue deck, right, and you're making a bunch of tokens, what you can do with this is use this on the creature you control, and you do need creatures in your deck, but if you're not playing that many and they're really good, expensive creatures, this goes crazy with it. Like, you don't have to build your deck around it, but there are a lot of decks this can be run in that it's not really run in. Like, it's just not put in those decks because people just don't know how to have fun. I think I mostly seen players play this in the Locust God. I'd be putting that in my Locust God now that I know about it because most of my creatures, I mean, the thing is like most creatures aren't one drops. If you're playing one drop, you're probably playing CEDH. It's not for you. And then if you're playing like a bunch of two drops, maybe don't play this. But if you're playing like a couple and you're worried about getting one, like the odds are lower, but at least at least you get something in like better. Like you get a better than a token, like better than a 1/1. Like you put the creature in your deck for a reason. Like you get 3 mana, you turn a token, like maybe you block, then do it, you know? You can do this at instant speed. Never mind, you can't. Sorry, I just read that bit. I was looking at it. You can't do this at instant speed. But that's okay, because it's still really good. Um, Sadly, that was my last point, so now I just made it look terrible, but, whatever. The quality on this card is really bad. Probably like one of the other cards, but um, sorry, allergies. So, ever watching Threshold? Now we're going into the enchantments. This is 3 mana, so same color as Propaganda and mana cost. Um, and whenever an opponent attacks you or a planeswalker you control with one or more creatures, you draw a card. So, the main thing about this is propaganda will cause people to hate you and actually attack you more because you're looking like someone who doesn't want to be attacked. You play this and you look like the guy who wants to be attacked. Because I've noticed that if you punish people for doing something or you add a cost onto something, they're going to do it even more. But if you put a benefit onto you, they're going to do it less because now they're thinking, I'm attacking them, I'm going to draw a card. Well, obviously they don't want you to draw a card for free. Like if they have like 5 damage to just swing somewhere, they're not going to deal 5 to you, let you draw a card because there's people who pay like 500 life for a card if they wanted to, They pay 500 mana. They would do that, you know what I mean? Like if it was like no downside, like this will protect you more than it will draw you cards, and when it does draw you cards, you'll probably be dying, but at the very least, it will incentivize people to attack other ways, and they won't just like. And maybe you can even make deals like, hey, I will let you attack unblocked, and you let me draw a card. So you take 2 damage, and you draw a card from it, and you make an ally, or you make someone kind of like you know what I mean? You guys both benefit there. In case that creature has a deals damage clause on it. And we've got Imprison in the Moon. This card does see play, mostly by me, but other people do too. But if you're playing mono blue, you're probably playing this. Uh, and I feel like more decks should be playing it that aren't mono blue. Mostly because there are like a few other effects like this. There is Kenrith's Transformation, and can't remember the name, but it turns a creature into an insect with no abilities and indestructible or whatever. But from the most part, from what I can tell from this, is that it's a permanent way to get rid of a commander. I think right now, the only commander, I mean, that is even unaffected by this, except in like very rare situations, would be the new the mech commander, because it would have to be a creature on your turn, because this is obviously a sorcery. And people usually don't crew it too often, anyways, even on their own turn. So if you give it flash, it's probably not that great. Um, but this can stop people from comboing. A lot of people combo off with their commander, getting rid of their commander, turning it into a land for the rest of the game. You will make an enemy. Do not get me wrong. You will. You just will make this person do anything. If they have a creature, it's going at you. Uh, if they can deal damage to you, if they can hurt you, if they can remove your stuff, they will do it. Uh, but it'll slow them down. I mean, it does ramp them, so you can always make that joke about how you ramp them or something stupid. But um, it is a weird permanent way to turn something into a land and just get rid of it for a while. Uh, Death Reap Ritual. The thing about this card that makes it so good, and maybe a little bad at the same time, is it triggers once each end step, including your opponent's. Sorry. It's 4 mana. Um, if your creature dies, you will draw a card. So if you're doing a lot of sack effects at instant speed, or um, you're doing a lot of board wiping, or anything really, just if creatures are dying, you will be drawing cards at the beginning of each end step. And there's a 5 mana version that you draw cards only when your creatures die and you gain life, but it's 5 mana and also only counts your creatures. If you're playing a deck that it will get you some benefits if you're playing a bunch of tokens, but if you're like you can benefit off other people having sack decks and draw some cards and uh, do all that stuff. You don't gain life, uh, and you have less control over it, but there will be more of a benefit from your opponents fighting each other, and you're going to be drawing cards off of it. It's a pretty good card. Should see more play than it really does, and that's just kind of how I feel about it. We got Possibility Storm. I play this in the Markov deck because you get to cast, you technically cast 2 spells with it. Um, man, that chair. Okay. Uh, I'm not even sitting in it. I'm standing. Doesn't really matter. Possibility Storm. So with Markov, you get a vampire each time you cast a vampire. And what Possibility Storms does is it's like Cascade for your spell, but for the creature type, and you cast that instead of the card you're casting originally. So if you're casting a 5 mana vampire, you'll get a 2 mana vampire maybe, or maybe even an 8 mana vampire if there is one. Um, so the main thing about this is it's also a lock piece. So this and Drannith Magistrate, which already makes it so your opponents cannot cast their own commanders, pretty much prevent your opponents from ever casting any more spells. It even gets around cards that can't be countered. The only thing it won't get around is cycling abilities or what else? I don't know. There's probably Madness, I think, right? Because you discard it, then you cast it, then you exile it, then cast it. So you're casting it from exile, so that does get around it. So there are a few effects, but those are so far and few between that by the time they actually get to those, you're probably killing them anyways. And if they do have it, that's cool. I mean, just yeah, cool for you. Good job. You got rid of my Possibility Storm. Uh, and it's a fun enough card that like also playing it regularly, which is my intention of putting it in here is because you're playing it for fun. You can have the combo in there, but if the combo doesn't go off, both combo pieces are really good. Um, One prevents you from casting from exile or the command zone, which is technically an exile. Uh, and this prevents you from having your opponents like combo off specifically. Like they cannot plan their combo ahead, and they probably won't be able to plan their turns as well. So it will probably slow the game down a little bit for your opponents to plan. If you're playing around slow people, some of these cards really aren't what you want because they're going to think too much, and that can hurt their brains. I think this is the last one. Okay. Mind's Dilation. 7 mana. I think this one's also $10, so it's probably one of the pricier ones, or maybe $8. But the main thing about it is whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn, you exile the top card of their library, and if it's a non-land, you cast it without paying its mana cost. So this is really good for opponents who deck thin. So if they're ramping and they're getting all the lands out of their deck, this is amazing. If you're going up against opponents who are playing big mana spells, this is cool. It's also hilarious if you're going up against a control deck because I have had this happen a lot of times where someone will try to counter my spell on my turn, and this counts anytime they cast their first spell any turn, not during their turn. So if they counter a spell, you get their spell, like the spell from the top of their library. So usually if this hits, you at least can get the chance of getting one spell, and you get your opponent to use a removal. But there are times where opponents have been trying to remove this, and I get a counter spell from the top of their deck, you know? So it can be pretty funny. I've even gotten silences, so like they'll cast a spell, be ready to combo off, and then they can't cast any more spells that turn. It's really weird, but it is a pretty fun card, especially if you just want to have fun and use your opponent's stuff against them. Um, I think from what you can tell from a couple of these cards that I love stealing cards and I love drawing cards. Uh, that is usually my main thing, and that is why I have no friends. Uh, I just have a play group that also don't like me. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good time. I mean, I'll check. It's a blank screen. Okay. This is the end of the slideshow. Yeah, okay. That makes me look great. Um, but other than that, I hope you guys have a good time. I appreciate you staying by for this long. 36 minutes. That's a lot longer than it should have been. I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good one. Bye.